This is a ratio, by the way, of beginning to end, 2.17. So they more than doubled their squat in these 4 months. All right, they more than doubled their squat in these 4 months. Now, if you compare this with our 4-month worth of training group, by the way, the 17 people in the quote doing the program version, I say that, I made sure that I put quotes around it and put these little squiggly lines to show you that it's not the program, but it's kind of sort of approaching the program. If you compare them, we see that the folks who are kind of sort of doing the program outperform, right? 8.8 average weekly increase versus 5.4 average weekly increase. A median increase of 154 pounds for the people doing the program versus 90 pounds for people who are just in it for 4 months. If you look at this, instead of average weekly change, but just gains, all right, just gains, the folks doing the program the distribution starts to look a little bit more normal, centered around about 150 to 175 pounds, right, with the mode being that particular bucket, the 175-pound bucket. Sure. So the question basically is, are we concerned about self-selecting too low of data? And I think the answer is no, and here's why. If you're doing the program, we as coaches know we're not going to start you out at 205 pounds, right? So what is it, 87 to the 70 people in this group, right, that were starting too high are not doing the program. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see.
Sure.
Do they both end up the same?
Well, I actually have that down here. There you go. So this is, I actually pulled this from the slides, but since you asked the question, I'll put it back in. This is folks who had an initial bar weight of more than 185 pounds, and this is the group that had less than 185 pounds, all right? And you'll see the median increase is 68 to 154 pounds. The median starting weight on the bar was 234 pounds, excuse me. Once you are above 185, your average starting weight on the bar is 234. To me, that seems way too high. This doesn't seem like a novice. I would not put a lot of trust in this data, right? At least this seems more, but it's going to get to one of my central conclusions, which is we need more starting strength coaches with more data, right? Now, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, that's a significant distribution difference, right? 68 to 154. Median increase ratios they're only adding 30%, where these guys are more than doubling, right? So any more questions about the squat? I want to look at the deadlift, press, and bench. The deadlift have some very curious results, which I don't understand. I can't make sense of it. No? Okay. All right, let me go back to the deadlift. So here is, I'm going to skip the 402, 317 sample sizes and just go to our 4-month data and our 4-month doing the program data. And the results are odd. Yes, the people doing the program seem to outperform the people who are just in it for 4 months. But look at the results. The median increase is 94 pounds versus our squatters, same people, who have a median increase of 154 pounds. Is this just the idea that people, what's that? Yeah, either they're squatting high and or they're skipping their deadlifts, right? Because this only assumes you're doing squats twice a week, right? This deadlift data, which I thought was curious. I couldn't explain it. Yeah, the only problem is we see deadlifts with much higher absolute weight than squats for the vast majority of our lifters. So if it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. All right. So the point Cody made was that the squat, we can kind of keep squatting higher as it gets heavier. The deadlift, it either comes off the ground or doesn't. I think that's a completely reasonable explanation. So, okay. So how about the press and the bench press? The press and the bench press both had results that were similar. All right. Much smaller average weekly increases, all right, 2.7 and 3.3, much lower than we've experienced. Everyone in this room knows that we can move a little bit faster on the press than this. A median increase of 48 pounds versus 40 pounds, and a ratio of 1.74 to 1.53. This is not dissimilar to the bench press, about the same change, a little bit higher, but not much higher. I really was expecting the bench to be closer to the squat in terms. Yeah, so the question was, are these differences statistic? And I didn't test for that, but I can. And I think the answer is yes, but yeah. So the question is it really different? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean, we can check on this, but I think the bigger question is, what would this look like if this was a coached data set, right? Which I think leads me to my plea for you, and Jordan's going to talk about this a lot more tomorrow, but we need data. We need coached data. And I think that is I think that's one of the most important things this organization can do. Once we have coached, controlled data, now we know it's not a randomized, double-blind study. We know all of that. But if we can show that our lifters are gaining 12 pounds a week on their squat, 14 pounds a week on their deadlift, or whatever, and we have a big data set that says this, then it's the rest of the world that has to beat us, right? It's the rest of the world that has to show that they can come even close, right? And I think that's the power. I think that's the power. Yes, sir. Yeah, so what CJ's saying is, like, these are the people that are on the website, right? They're part of the team, right? And they're not getting it right, right? They're not getting it right. They're not showing the gains that everyone in this room knows can be produced, right? And I think that's one of the main takeaways. I think that's why it's so important that we build this controlled, coached data set. I think this will open up many, many doors for our organization, and I think it will put the responsibility on other organizations to try to match our returns, right? To match our returns. Let's see. So where do we go from here? The first thing that I think we talked about already is that it does demonstrate the need for starting strength coaches. We don't know if the squats are high, right? We don't know if there's any hip drive in the press. We don't know any of that. We don't know if the bench is actually touching the chest on the way down, right? So we don't even know if this is quality data, right? Which means it's not, if we don't know that, okay? So it demonstrates the need for these coaches. I think we also need to finish the data set. I'd like to see what happens once we get our N of 17 up to maybe N of 35, hopefully, for the kind of sort of doing the program self-reported data. And then we, I think, can do a little bit more statistical analysis on it at that point. Also, we need to look for new sources of data. And I know Bo is going to be shipping some stuff to me. Some of his trainees have kept logs, and he's going to ship those logs with some of my students in April. Danielle Rodier is going to do the same. So I ask all of you coaches, if you have training logs, all right, that predate the registry, could we have access to them? Could we start to put together a data set? Could we start to collect kind of what we did? Because it's not the same as the registry, right? The registry has a set of requirements that you're going to go into. You know, you're going to enter this data knowing this. This is backfilled data, but it's still better because it's coach observed, right? You guys have worked with these people, and we can actually show the increases. And then we have all sorts of levels of data. We've got the self-reported stuff, which I think is our base. That's our very bottom. And then we have everything that we've collected up until this point, which is, I think, a higher quality data. And then we have the registry. Okay, so the question was, what type of format? First of all, thank you that you're going to send the data. Ideally, any sort of Excel file I can manipulate. If it's just training logs, I am happy with that. We initially collected the data such that we had weight, reps, reps, reps. I don't know if we need reps, reps, reps at the end. So I think if my fellow coaches can give me reasons why we need to keep collecting the rep data, I will. But if not, the work set weight would be fantastic. and then corresponding dates, and we can take it from there. A lot. I don't, but it took a lot of bribery on my part to get them to do it. But they all did a hell of a good job. I mean, they put summer weekends, weeknights into this. So.
Did you notice it had any effect on their training?
Well, these were all of my committed lifters. We learned a heck of a lot from the data. In fact, I'm glad you brought this up. I wanted to mention a few things. So the one thing we noticed, first of all, is most people quit or switch programs far too soon, right? 4 weeks in and they're on to the Texas method, right? We also noticed a fair number of people who stay on the program too long, right? I mean, I think we had one person who logged 702 separate entries on the starting strength program, right? And what you see is just a flat line. There's no increases in strength, so they're not doing the program. We noticed that there was a tendency to reset too quickly. Either A, they're just not pushing themselves hard enough, or B, as we talked about earlier, they're setting the bar too high. They're setting the initial weight too high on the bar. We noticed that there often were too big of jumps. You would see bench presses going up 10 pounds at a time when probably 5 or 2.5 is appropriate. And then you'd see, of course, the inevitable stall, reset, or long periods with no increases in weight, which is not the program. So we learned a heck of a lot from collecting the data. All right, well, thank you very much for your time. And thank you.